What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Coachable Podcast. I'm so excited to be here in the studio with you guys today. It's just me and here with another episode to share my heart with you. If you are new to this channel or to this podcast, welcome. I am the host of this show, Tori Gordon, and I am a intuitive and spiritual life coach, trauma-informed breathwork facilitator, energy healer, medicine woman, and really just someone who is committed to her own path of spiritual evolution and personal growth, self-mastery, and really just trying to do what I can to live in harmonious relationship with myself, with the planet, and with the people in my life. And today I want to talk to you about something that is challenging for many of us. It's been a huge, huge teacher for me throughout my life and on my journey, especially in the last 5-6 years. And it's a topic that most of us don't want to spend a lot of time talking about or thinking about, and especially feeling through. But in my experience is an absolute requirement in order to do the healing work. And that is the reality of pain that we all go through, pain that we are carrying, pain that we have not processed, and how that shows up in our lives. For me, one of the perspectives that I have on life is that my soul, I believe I'm a spiritual being, in a human body, having a human 3D experience, but I am also a spiritual, eternal, divine being, energetic being. And I have a soul that will go on and continue to exist, that is not based in my physical reality. It's not made of substance or matter, but it is as real, if not more real, in terms of the reality and the essence of who I am. And one of the things that I believe to be true is that, for whatever reason, and I've come to understand some of those, but, my soul chose to come into this body and incarnate on this planet at this time in the world. And I'm here to learn some things. There's a curriculum for my life in terms of what I'm meant to learn in this life, because I see life as school in some ways. I see it as a classroom, a place to come learn about who I am, about who I'm not, about what I'm doing here and why I'm here at all. And I learned that through contrast. I learned that through duality. We live on a planet where there's good and bad and right and wrong, black and white, Democrat, Republican. We draw these lines oftentimes in the sand, and we try to differentiate and separate to try and figure out who we are and where we belong. And one of the things that, I think is inevitable about being human is pain. There's a quote, that pain is inevitable in life. Suffering is optional. I believe that to be true. And yet so many of us, most of us, are extremely uncomfortable with our own pain, and we avoid it at all costs. And one of the things that I've realized throughout my life is that pain is actually not the enemy I thought it was. We live in a culture that tells us to pursue pleasure and avoid pain at all costs. We are constantly marketed and thrown products and advertising that will help us to numb the pain of aging, of physical pain, chronic pain. We're being fed everything, online in terms of what can take away our pain. Oh, just get some quick dopamine, just keep scrolling. Oh, just buy this product, just add this to cart, and then you'll feel a little bit better. And we pursue pleasure and we run from pain. And part of my spiritual path has shown me that pain is actually meant to be one of my friends. And that I can make peace with my pain by making it not something that I hate or avoid or run from, but something that I welcome. I think our culture and our society teaches us that pain is the enemy. Emotional pain is something that should be, distracted from, numbed, avoided. We'll move on to the next best thing. We'll just, spiritually bypass our pain by acting like everything happens for a reason and God's not going to give me more than I can handle. And, and we don't ever sit with it unless we're forced to, or unless we come to this awareness that this pain is a teacher. And I've often said that, pain's not the enemy, but pain is a teacher. Not learning the lesson that the pain came to teach you is the enemy, right? So for me, pain has showed up in so many different ways. The pain of heartbreak, the pain of losing people that I loved, the pain of feeling rejected or judged or, not being good enough at times. And the ways I would mask that or act like I was okay or pretend that things weren't hurting me when they were. And one of the ways that I think we miss the magic, we miss the purpose in our pain is when we don't look at it in terms of what are you here to teach me? Pain is often an indicator that something needs to change, right? Oftentimes when we're in physical pain, something's out of alignment. If you've ever had back pain and you need to go to the chiropractor, you need to go get adjusted. Maybe you feel relief when you find that alignment again. And I find that that's the same thing in our spiritual life. That when I am not honoring my body, when I'm not honoring my needs, when I'm not speaking my desires, or I'm not communicating my expectations or taking aligned action in the things that I want to create, then I get out of alignment with myself, with my truth, with my authenticity. And there's pain that comes from that. It's the pain of disconnection. It's the pain of being out of alignment with yourself. When you say yes to things you want to say no to, when you please or fake or pretend, when you withhold love from other people or from yourself, these are the ways that we get out of alignment and we create unnecessary suffering or unnecessary pain for ourselves. So one thing I want you to understand about pain is that it's not something that necessarily needs to be avoided by any means. It's a teacher. And pain is an indicator that something needs to often change. Not always, but many times it does. And so we can look at it and be like, oh, is this trying to tell me that something's off? That this needs my attention? That it needs me to take care of it in some way, whether it's physical or emotional? And, when it comes to our emotional baggage, if you will, that we take and drag through life, and we often take it into relationship after relationship, or we just live with this chronic disconnection, this subtle, feeling that we always live with. Maybe you're depressed, maybe you experience anxiety. These are alternative expressions of pain. Right? Maybe you have chronic illness. Maybe You are just experiencing financial hardship and pain in your career or relationally or with your family. Like there's just so many areas, right? And yet our pain can turn into something something so filled with purpose and meaning if we allow it. But we can't do that if we avoid it. So what I want to share with you is an insidious way that a lot of us avoid our own pain. And it shows up as something you wouldn't really expect. And that is what I call the savior complex. This is when we try to save other people from their pain. And I'm going to give you a couple different indicators or characteristics of people that, have a savior complex. I have definitely identified as this throughout my life. And I've had to be honest and look at, where does my need to try and help people come from? Is it in trying to am I trying to save somebody from their pain? And what I've realized is that we often try to save people from things, from feelings that we don't yet know the value of. I'll say that again. We try to save people from feelings that we don't know the value of. But when you understand the value of your pain and feeling it and going through it and growing through the discomfort and your edges and finding that resilience that comes from doing the hard thing, you understand how much medicine, how much power is in that. So in my work with other people and in my coaching and my healing and the spaces that I create, one thing I try to be so aware of is that I'm not here to save you from your pain, because I know the value of it. I'm here to help create a space where you can get in touch with it, where you can feel it, and then you can process it and move through it so that you can find relief, so it can move, so that it can release. Because emotional pain, whether it's sadness or grief or depression, anxiety, frustration, resentment, bitterness, guilt, shame, these things are emotions that are energetic. They're energy. And if we don't feel them, if we don't express them, then we repress them and we store them in our body. And so they then start to manifest as dis-ease, and then ultimately they accumulate over time and will over time manifest as disease in the body. So it's very important that we get acquainted with our pain and that we pay attention to it and that we learn the skills and the tools to start to process that. But I want to go into this idea of the savior complex and how sometimes, even with the best of intentions, we will try to save people from their pain because we think that that's going to help them in some way. And there is something to be said about being of service, of supporting people in their challenging times, to being a loving and committed friend or partner or family member, to being a resource for people when they need support and help. This is, I'm not at all saying that you should not do that. That is absolutely what we're here to do for our communities, for our families. But I would assert that it's not supportive to try and save everyone. Not only because you can't, but because you disempower those to save themselves. No one can save me from my pain. I am the only one who can do that. And when we try to save the people in our lives, when we try to make our parents or our partners or our friends do the work that they're not ready or willing to do, we end up hurting ourselves. We end up creating pain for ourselves. And what I'd even go as far as to say is sometimes for those who do identify or have these characteristics of somebody who has a savior complex, sometimes we will even go so far as to try and save other people from their pain as a coping strategy or as an avoidance strategy to not have to sit with and deal with our own. Because if I'm so fixated on you and what you're going through and helping you through your problems, then I don't have time to focus on or deal with my own. So just be aware of that as I go through these few characteristics so that you might identify if this is something that you're doing in your life and how you can actually, instead of disempowering the people that you love, you can empower them to do for themselves what only they can do, which is to feel their own feelings, to create space, to learn from the things that have gone, their hardship and the adversity in their life so that they can grow and they can make choices that are in alignment with what they need and how they can support themselves, because they are the person that they are going to be with for the rest of their lives, and people come in and are out of our lives. And if we are codependent, if we are handicapped and we spiritually handicapped in the sense that we can't support ourselves through a process of feeling our own pain, then we will never be able to reach our full potential. So in order to not disempower the people that we love by trying to save them, let's first kind of identify some of the characteristics of what someone with a savior complex includes. So number one is if you find yourself feeling overly responsible for the well-being and happiness of others. This is very, very common, especially if you're empathic and open-hearted and just a deeply caring person. The important piece here is feeling overly responsible. And I laugh because I've talked about this at length and in depth in therapy over the past few years. This feeling that I used to feel of feeling overly responsible for everyone, feeling this intense pressure to take care of everyone. And that if someone was going through a hard time, it was up to me to fix it for them, to support them through it, versus creating space if that was necessary for that, but like really encouraging them to do what they need to do, right? Versus taking that responsibility on my shoulders because it's not mine. So if you feel an overemphasis of this desire to make sure everyone's okay, to make sure everyone's happy, that might be an indicator. Number two is a strong desire to fix or solve someone else's problems. Now, like I said, if you're an empathic, compassionate, open-hearted person, you likely want to support people through their challenging times and seasons. But if you are uncomfortable with other people's discomfort, with their struggle, if you see someone, a friend, a roommate, a loved one who's going through a challenging time and it's something that starts to consume you and you feel the need to fix in order for you to feel better, then you might have a savior complex. If your okayness, your peace, your internal stability gets wobbly when the people in your life are feeling a little bit unstable, then that might be an indicator of a little bit of codependency there and a little bit of that savior complex that it can kind of manifest as. Number three is difficulty setting boundaries and saying no to other people. So this is a big one for a lot of us. And this is a skill that is strengthened over time with intentionality and commitment and devotion to self-love. We are so conditioned to love externally, to put our love and to channel our love to others, to take care of other people at the expense of ourselves, where we'll often neglect ourselves in order to put everyone else above us. And so that often can result in struggling to set boundaries or say no. And so if this is something you struggle with, just jot this down, take note, and I'm going to then at the end of this episode or towards the end of this episode, give you some ideas for where and why this originates for all of us and what we can do about it. Number 5 is feeling guilty or anxious when unable to help someone. So if someone asks you to do something and says, hey, I'm I've got this event coming up. Can you come? Or I need to move. Is there any way you could help me? Or, hey, I've got this, computer issue. Can you fix it for me? And, it could be anything, frankly. It's like you're being asked to do something that it's not your responsibility. And for whatever reason, you can't or don't want to or don't have the capacity to do that. Do you then feel guilty, feel bad? Like you've done something bad if you can't show up and do what someone needs or wants you to do. If you hold on to those feelings of guilt or anxiety around saying no because you're afraid to let people down, you're afraid to disappoint people, you always are chronically trying to manage their feelings and want them to be happy. Number 6 is difficulty accepting help or support from others. So this is kind of a flip. And I have seen this a lot. I used to struggle with this more. I've come a long way with it, but I've recently identified it in some of my close friends. And this is an area of development for a lot of us where we're learning how to receive. We're learning how to accept support from other people because we're very comfortable being in the facilitator or support giver role and much less comfortable with receiving. So if this is you've oftentimes had to neglect your needs for other people or have been responsible for other people's feelings. And so as your life has progressed, you have gotten really familiar with how to give, but not so comfortable in asking for help because you don't want to be a burden. You don't want to put that responsibility on someone else, which you feel all the time, right? So if you struggle with asking or accepting help and support from other people, this might be a reason why. And the last one here is feeling a sense of worth or validation when you help others. It feels good to support people. It feels good to be able to do something for someone else 100%. But I posted something on TikTok recently, and this is for all the givers. So I want you to ask yourself this question. Are you doing what you're doing? Are you showing up to be of service and contribution and giving to others from love or for love? That is an important question. Are you doing it for the validation, for the feeling of being a good person, a feeling of self-worth that it gives you, for them to like you, for them to think you're a good friend, for them to talk highly of you? That would be doing it for love. And there's a big difference in the energetics behind doing things for love and doing it from love. Because the truth is, when you actually do something from an open heart, from a really giving, service-oriented place, because you have filled your own cup, because you have boundaries and you're able to say no and you're able to receive, so you actually have something to give, that is when you're going to make the most impact. That is when you're going to make the biggest difference, not when you're actually trying to get love, because that's not really giving at all. That's actually a form of taking and masking it as something else. It's actually a form of manipulation that is very covert that most people don't recognize, but we're doing it to really get the validation and the worth versus giving the love or the support or the encouragement that someone else needs. So those are 7 different characteristics. You might identify a couple of those in your own life. And if you do, it's completely okay. This is something we're all growing through. How can we learn to be sovereign, independent, yet supported by others, right? Allow ourselves to be rooted in who we are and equipped and mature in our ability to take care of ourselves, speak our own needs, and also allow ourselves to be supported and ask for support from others. So where does this stem from? Because I'm talking about pain, right? And this discomfort that we have with pain, not just with our own, but with other people's, so much that we want to fix it, that we want to change it, that we want to make it better. We want to save them from it so that they don't have to feel it. But no one is exempt. No one gets a pass. No one gets to cut to the front of the line and avoid sitting with the painful experiences of your life that have shaped you into who you are, that have conditioned your psyche and your behavior patterns as a byproduct of the hard things that you've been through. We've all been through adversity and challenge and hardship. And it's not our fault. It's not, we're not always responsible for what happens to us, but it is our responsibility for what we do about it. And it's not my responsibility that you do that work. That has been unhooking that like mental hook that used to tell me like if you're hurting, it's my fault, it's my responsibility, or it's my responsibility to make it better or fix it for you, is something that's been a challenge for me over the years. And I've realized at times it's come from my own discomfort with other people's pain and a belief that I held that said, one, that it was my fault. I thought I was responsible for other people's emotions. And if you can do something for someone, you should. Now, that's tricky because if it causes you to betray or neglect yourself, I would advise against it. I have done that to the greatest extreme that you can imagine. I have sacrificed my own needs and wants and happiness for what I thought someone else needed. And there were consequences. There were costs to that. And I suffered. I caused myself a lot of pain. However, I supported somebody and I made that choice. I consciously decided to do that, and I've lived with that choice. But it's something I wouldn't continue to do at that level. These macro or micro aggressions towards ourselves, where we're just like, other people are more important. Other people are more important. Other people are more important. And I'm not advocating for selfishness. I'm advocating for self-sovereignty and self-love, and that you do not have to be the martyr in order to love someone. You do not have to sacrifice your own well-being for the well-being of someone else. And actually doing that doesn't make you a good person. It just makes you somebody who doesn't really value themselves. And that's something I've had to learn. And that was hard, that I valued everyone else so much more than I valued my own internal well-being and myself. And that's been something I've grown through over the years. So where does this come from? A couple different things. And then I'm going to give you guys some journal prompts that at home you can sit with to see how this lands for you, and help you to kind of unpack this a little bit more and start to see where you can really start to set boundaries, say no, honor your needs, and love people from a place of giving love, not getting love. So, one, this can absolutely still stem from, let me drum roll, childhood. Yay. Who's surprised? Childhood experiences. So if you grew up in an environment where you were expected to take care of other people, your parents, your siblings, you were parentified as a young child and expected to take care of the people in your home. You had to be a caregiver, maybe for a sick family member or for your younger siblings, if mom and dad weren't present. If you had to be you had to be the man of the house or the woman of the house. You had to be the responsible one in the family. That might be something that would prompt you in your adulthood to develop a savior complex as a way of coping with your own feelings of feeling helpless as a child. Because you didn't have a choice. You had to. You were forced into a position as a child to be in a role that was not yours to be in. And so you learned through those experiences as a child that you had to put other people's emotions, feelings, care, needs above your own because you had to be the responsible one. And that was not your fault at all. It was based on the, circumstances in your home and in your environment. And that can have a long lasting effect on you. So when we feel helpless, like there's nothing we can do to change this, then we just accept it. And we're like, okay, I'm just going to have to endure this. This is just how life is. But as adults, we do have a choice. And part of reclaiming our sovereignty and helping ourselves process through the pain is realizing now that we have a choice, that you aren't responsible for everyone, and who you really are responsible for is taking care of yourself. And so bringing your needs into the forefront will be really important if that was kind of how your childhood was growing up. Number 2 is where this kind of inability to sit with our pain and other people's pain comes from when we try to save other people. It's from low self-esteem. So when we feel like we don't have worth, or that it is tied to our ability to help others, that our value is only, we're only valuable when we're doing something for someone else, then this is a way that we cope to help ourselves feel good, valued, lovable, worthy, right? So if you don't have a highly developed self-esteem or self-concept, you will think that your value comes from what you do. This is very, very common. And so the way that we kind of support ourselves through that is to develop this understanding of our own worthiness, of our inherent value, that because we are a human being, because we exist, we are inherently valuable, that we don't have to do anything. And this can be very, very challenging for those who've been taught that what you achieve, what you do, how you give, and how you take care of others is what makes you a good person, or what makes you lovable. And if you don't do anything, then you have nothing to offer. And so you're replaceable, you're trash, you're worthless, right? And maybe we even grew up in environments where we were told that because we didn't produce, we didn't perform, we didn't achieve, we were worthless. So a way we can support ourselves and empower those in our lives through their painful experiences is to come back to our inherent sense of self-worth, that you are important, that you matter, and that you're valuable despite what you do for others. And if you say no, if you set a boundary, that doesn't make you bad. It's not something you have to feel guilty for because your worth is not tied to it, right? Number 3 is trauma. So when you've experienced trauma or abuse, you can develop a savior complex for sure as a way to cope with your own sense of, like I said, helplessness, powerlessness, or vulnerability. Because we don't want to feel our own vulnerability. We don't want to feel our own pain. And if we have experienced trauma, which is indicative of an experience that was too much, too soon, too fast, it was completely overwhelming for our nervous system. We felt powerless to change it because our agency, our sovereignty was stripped from us. We didn't have a choice in the matter. Again, it's understanding now that you have a choice. You get to decide. You get to determine what you say yes to and what you say no to, and honor the boundaries internally that you have for yourself, and living in authenticity, living in truth with yourself. This is a process. This is a process of unlearning and deconditioning all of the belief systems that tell you your worth comes from what you do and how you serve people, that you don't have a choice, that you're a victim, you don't you just have to do this. You have to endure it. This is just how life is. And realizing that might have been the past. Absolutely. But in your current everyday reality now, the beauty of being human is that we as adults, we have a choice. We have agency. As children, we might not have, because we grew up in families and we couldn't take care of ourselves. We needed other people to take care of our needs. But now you have a choice, and letting go of your need to save everybody else will require you to redirect that energy to saving yourself, to loving yourself, to honoring and giving yourself the love that you give other people. Another one is cultural expectations. You guys, like, it's just built into society and culture a lot of times, where high value, like, comes from self-sacrifice, from helping others. That can contribute to, the savior complex kind of identity. And it also can come down to personality traits. Like I said at the very beginning of this, if you're very empathic naturally, or very sensitive person, you're highly compassionate, you feel other people's emotions, then being highly intuitive or empathic can be a challenge, especially when you don't know how to cut off or discern what is your feeling versus what is mine. That clear delineation of being able to identify what is someone else's experience and emotion versus what is yours is very, very important in this development and the releasing of the need to save everyone else. Because if you're chronically just absorbing and taking on everyone's pain and all their emotions, it's going to be extremely overwhelming. And so you're going to want to fix it. You're going to want to change it. But when you can start to discern and feel through embodiment and through meditative practice and awareness, developing your awareness of what is my feeling, what is my emotion, what are the sensations happening in my body that are mine, and discerning what is mine versus what is someone else's. That is very, very important. Because if not, you will get completely emotionally overwhelmed, and trying to save and fix is a natural coping response to that feeling of overwhelm and feeling emotionally flooded with everybody else's experiences. So I'm going to give you guys some journal prompts, and I want you to take these, write them down, because I think they'll help you kind of do this deeper level of identification and self-reflection around being able to sit with your own pain and letting go of this chronic need to save everyone else from theirs. So one thing I want you to write down is write about a time when you felt responsible for solving someone else's problems. What did that feel like for you? So that's number one. Write about a time when you felt responsible for solving someone else's problems. What did that feel like for you? Did it feel like pressure? Did it feel like a feeling of helplessness, powerlessness, overwhelm? You didn't have a choice, right? Right through that experience. What age were you? What belief do you think you formed as a byproduct of that? Number two, it's important to reflect on your relationship with the word no. So how do you feel when you say no to someone's request for help? Does it bring up just a horrible feeling, sensation in your body? Do your hands, palms start to sweat? Your heart starts to race? Your head starts to pound? You're like, oh my God, please don't put me in this position. I don't want to have to say no. Do you overly apologize, right? How do you feel when someone says no to you? These are two questions to ask yourself. What's your relationship with the word no? Do you feel like if you say no, you're rejecting someone? Because that's not always true. You can say no and not reject someone. You're just you don't have the capacity. You're not taking it on. So how do you feel when someone says no to you? And how do you feel when you have to say no to someone else's request? And then write about a time when you felt guilty for not being able to help someone. What emotions does that bring up for you? I can definitely think of moments where I've held on to guilt or shame because I wasn't able to give someone what they needed. A great example of this, and this was not my fault, no fault of my own, but I definitely held on to guilt. My sister was dying of cancer and she needed a bone marrow transplant desperately to survive. And as her sibling, I was the best hope for a perfect match. And I wasn't able to give it to her. Unfortunately, I ended up being a half match. And if I had been a full match, as we were hoping, I would have absolutely given it to her. But I still held on to this guilt and this shame of thinking it was my fault, thinking it was my fault that she ended up dying, essentially, because I wasn't able to save her. So when I tell you my savior complex has gone deep, it has gone deep because I couldn't even, what I thought it was my responsibility to save my sister. And I couldn't do that. And so I have had to integrate, sit with, and feel my own pain as, my pain, the pain that I felt of feeling inadequate, feeling not good enough, feeling like I let her down, like I had failed her, which are all perceptions. They're all stories. They weren't true, but I had to feel my pain. And that has been one of my greatest teachers. So that's just an example of a time when I felt guilty for not being able to help someone, especially someone I loved who was desperately in need. It brings up a lot of emotion for me, and it's helpful to sit with that and to reflect on that. I'd also invite you to reflect on your own needs here. When was the last time you prioritized your own needs over someone else's? How did that feel for you? What came up for you? Was that a challenge? Did it feel like you were going to throw up when you're like telling someone, actually, I don't have the capacity, the time, the energy. It's a no for me. What did that bring up for you? And when was the last time you were able to do that? Was it only, and is it only when you're in complete burnout that you're able to say no? And remember that oftentimes over-explaining and over-apologizing when you aren't able to do something for someone is often a trauma response. This need to feel like we have to justify and explain ourselves in order to be accepted, to be loved. Remember, no is a full sentence. So you don't always have to. You absolutely can give context, but you don't have to overly explain and overly apologize. And just notice when someone, says something to you, asks you to come to a party that you can't go to, or asks you to do something that you can't do, or is a no for you. Notice if you preface with, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but you don't have to be sorry for honoring for the truth. Sometimes it's appropriate and sometimes it's not. Just notice if that's how you lead, if you over apologize. Also, it's important here to reflect and write about a time when you felt overwhelmed or burnt out from helping others. What led to that feeling? I have a friend right now who is in desperate need of being able to receive some love. And the thing is, the pain that he's feeling, is only something that he can move through, and he needs his own love. He's somebody I love desperately, and I watch how he gives and he gives and he gives to everybody else. He's very comfortable in a service role, facilitator role. He's very gifted and brilliant at being able to hold space for others. And oftentimes when we don't create space for ourselves and we neglect ourselves, then we end up in burnout and depleted and depressed and lethargic and frustrated and exhausted, right? And so it's important to know when you are, when you're in need of your own nourishment. You're in need of your own love. You're in need of giving yourself the thing that you give other people. And then the last thing I'm going to ask you guys to reflect on here, if you are doing these journaling or writing prompts, is reflect on your beliefs about helping other people. Everything that causes us pain, unless it's actually physical, is something we're thinking about, right? So what are your beliefs? What are your thoughts about helping others? What do you believe to be true? Do you believe that it's selfish to put your own needs first? And do you believe that your worth is tied into your ability to help others? I certainly did. And I thought I would be worthless if I wasn't contributing or impacting in the ways that I thought I needed to. And I put so much pressure, so much responsibility on myself that it wasn't fun to show up. It wasn't fun to support people. It was so much work. And so what I would encourage you guys to do is infuse like the fun back into it, because it's fun to help people when you also help yourself, when you have something to give, when you're giving from love, not for love, right? So untangling your worth from what you do is a big piece here, and recognizing that we're all capable and sovereign and responsible for our own healing, and learning the lessons that each of our individual pain has come to teach each of us. I can't learn your lessons for you. You can't learn your lessons for me. The greatest gift that we can do for each other is to sit with our own pain and to learn from it, to grow, and to not inflict it on the people that we love by avoiding it, by dismissing it, by acting like it's not there. Because if we do not do what we need to do to feel in order to heal, we will unconsciously bury that pain, and it will unconsciously come out onto the people that we love, because hurt people hurt people. And if we don't sit with our hurt, we will then inflict it. And none of us want to do that. So let us all commit to our healing so that we can love each other instead of trying to save each other, and focus that attention on doing what we can do, which is to save ourselves. I love you guys. I hope you sit with these juicy questions. I hope you allow the truth of your own heart to bubble to the surface as you kind of make space for the pain in your life that needs to be felt, that's asking for your attention. And I encourage you not to think of it as something that's going to overtake you or consume you. It is an emotion that just needs to be expressed through some sound, through some music, through some movement, through your expression, whether you write, whether you shake, whether you yell, whether you scream, whether you cry, whether you laugh. That's how you move that energy through your body, through your nervous system, and ultimately how you find relief. If you need support in this area, which many, many of us do, first of all, I just want to let you know you're not alone, and this is an opportunity to flex that muscle of asking for help. So if you need some support in this area and you're a woman, I encourage you to join the Revive Women's membership, which is my monthly membership where I teach all of my tools around emotional release, emotion activation, anger release, how to move through grief. All of that is inside that membership. It's $97 a month, and you can cancel at any time. If you go to the link in my bio or revivelasvegas.com, you can join us in Revive Women. And if you're a man, I'm going to have an upcoming workshop called Revive Your Emotions, where I'm going to be diving into the same content. So make sure you're on our email list so you can get notified of all of that. Go to revivelasvegas.com and you can join the email list so you can get notified of all the new workshops that I have coming out. And yeah, my encouragement to you is to create some space for yourself to feel what you need to feel, because that's the only way that we heal, you guys. And sometimes if we haven't been taught how to feel our feelings, we don't know how. So ask for support, allow people to support you, and make sure when you're showing up to give for others, it's from love, from a filled up cup, and not from a place of burnout over responsibility or exhaustion, or a place of trying to get love. Give it to yourself, give yourself what you need, and trust that, other people, the people that you love, are capable of saving themselves. I love you guys. I'll see you next week on the Coachable Podcast. See ya.